Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to our session today. Today we will be looking into three chapters, but all these three chapters are quite brief. So the first chapter that we will look into is subject and predicate, followed by relative clauses, and then adverbial clauses. So let's get going. All right. So here we are. Subject and predicate. Every complete sentence contains two parts, a subject and a predicate. The subject is what or whom the sentence is about, while the predicate tells something about the subject. In the following sentences, the predicate is enclosed in braces while the subject is underlined. Judy runs. Judy and her dog run on the beach every morning. So what do we have here? Every sentence in English, or most sentences in English, can be broken down to two parts. The first part being the subject, and the second part being the predicate of the sentence. So the subject is what or whom the sentence is about. Such as, for example, if you look at the sentence, Judy runs, here the subject is Judy, because the sentence is about the subject here, which is Judy again, right? Okay. And what about the predicate? The predicate tells us something about the subject. The predicate here tells us something about the subject, right? Such as what the subject may be doing. So in this case, we have the subject running, the subject who runs, right? So the sentence says, Judy runs. So Judy is the subject, runs is the predicate. And in the following sentence, we have a compound subject, right? Because we've got two things connected by the coordinating conjunction and. So what we have here, Judy and her dog. Judy and her dog run on the beach every morning. Judy and her dog run on the beach every morning. Here, Judy and her dog, this part is the subject of the sentence, right? A compound subject, because we have two issues connected by and, or two objects, or two, not exactly objects, a person and a pet, or a person and an animal, or a person and the person's pet, right? So they together, what do? They run on the beach every morning. So run on the beach every morning, this part is the predicate of the sentence. The subject is Judy and her dog, and the predicate is run on the beach every morning. Are we clear? I hope so. Okay. Tasnia Rabi says, Assalamu alaikum, sir. Wa alaikum assalam. How are you, Tasnia? Ninzamoni is asking, what's going on? And Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam to you, Ninza. Well, what's going on is we're learning, or we're discussing subject and predicate, and then we will discuss relative clauses, and then we will discuss adverbial clauses today. Okay? All right. Tasnia Rabi has asked me how I am doing, or how I am. I'm fine, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for asking. I'm doing great, alhamdulillah, and I hope you are doing no less as well. Okay, we have Aljaim Pap who's saying thanks. Would you please kindly let me know what you're thanking me for? If it's because of the session, you're most welcome. Okay, Nurul Alam Rido is also saying thanks a lot. Well, most welcome to you, sir, but do clarify why exactly are you thanking me for? Okay. All right, we have a wonderful remark here from Sarafat Afridi saying, Assalamu alaikum, sir. The most ecstatic matter of your classes for me is that you always repeat the previous lessons we asked without being bothered. Hats off, sir. Oh, thank you so much, Afridi, for this wonderful remark. I just try to do whatever that fits, whatever that I deem is best, whatever I deem best. But then again, advice, such wonderful pieces of advice from you really helps me, really help me determine what I should be doing to do better, to get better, and to help all of you better, to help ourselves better. Okay? So thanks again. Tasnim Bushra is here saying Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam, Tasnim. All right. So I hope you're clear on this part, subject and predicate. So almost all English sentences have a subject and basically the person or the object that the sentence is about, such as Judy runs. So in this sentence, the subject is Judy, and the predicate is the part where we get to know what the subject is doing, or what the subject has done, or what the subject does, or what the subject will do. Okay? So in the first example, we have Judy runs. So Judy, the subject, and the predicate is the word runs, that tells you that she does something often, or she does something on a regular basis. And what does she do? She runs. Okay. In the second example, we have Judy and her dog. And we've got a compound subject here because we have two subjects combined with or put together with and. So Judy and her dog run on the beach every morning. There's a compound subject, or the subject of this sentence is Judy and her dog, and the predicate is run on the beach every morning. This part letting us know what the subject or what the subjects do. So what do? They run on the beach every morning. Okay? All right. Now, we're here. Relative clauses. So what are relative clauses? What do they do? Relative clauses give us information about the person or thing mentioned. I repeat, relative clauses give us information about the person or thing mentioned. Defining relative clauses give us essential information that tells us who or what we are talking about. Defining relative clauses give us essential information that tells us who or what we are talking about, such as the woman who lives next door works in a bank. These are the flights that have been cancelled. We usually use a relative pronoun or adverb to start a defining relative clause, such as who, which, that, when, where, or whose. So do you remember relative pronouns? By any chance, do you happen to remember relative pronouns? We discussed relative pronouns when we were discussing the chapter on pronouns. So we did discuss a particular category of pronouns called relative pronouns. And relative pronouns, whenever you have a clause with a relative pronoun that basically, whenever you have a clause that is determined or that is designed by a relative pronoun, you have a relative clause. Okay, and what do exactly a relative clause do? A relative clause gives us essential information about the person or about something that we are talking about in the sentence, or something or someone that we are discussing in the sentence, right? Or in any sentence, such as, for example, take a look at the first example here. The woman who lives next door works in a bank. Now here, you could say the woman works in a bank, right? But then again, this would not be really clear, because which woman works in a bank? You don't know. You haven't said. The other person that you have said this to wouldn't know really, right? So you have to mention more. So you have to come up with an essential information here. And how do you exactly insert that piece of information here? You do so with the help of a relative clause. And this, for this purpose, or for this particular sentence, the relative clause is who lives next door. So the woman who lives next door works in a bank. So the relative clause in this sentence is who lives next door. Okay? What about the following sentence? These are the flights that have been cancelled. These are the flights that have been cancelled. So here in this sentence, the relative clause is that have been cancelled. You're not only going to talk about the flights, but you want to mention, or you want to talk about an essential, you want to mention an essential piece of information about these flights. And how do you do so? You take the help of a relative clause. So you say, these are the flights that have been cancelled. We usually use a relative pronoun or adverb to start a defining relative clause. And some of the relative pronouns are who, which, that, when, where, or whose. We use these relative pronouns to form relative clauses that basically tell add essential pieces of information about subjects in sentences. Okay? All right. Okay, we've got an interesting question here from Isbal Din Ahmed asking, Vicky's sense of responsibility and commitment always inspires her team members to do their best. Why should we use inspires instead of inspire? Can you tell me why? Do you? Can you guess why? Well, you see, what do you have? You have Vicky's sense of responsibility and commitment, right? So is it confusing you in any way that the subject here is plural because you've got responsibility and commitment? Is it the responsibility and commitment that inspire you? Actually not. Here, the subject is not plural, but rather singular. Why? Because the subject is singular, and that subject is sense, not responsibility, not commitment, but sense of what? Sense of responsibility and commitment. So here, responsibility and commitment is somehow being portrayed as one singular sense, one singular thing. Therefore, it is a singular phrase or a singular subject, which needs following by a singular verb, which in this case is inspires. So Vicky's sense of responsibility and commitment always inspires her team members to do their best. Okay? Are we clear on this? I hope so. So don't think that the subject is a plural here because you've got responsibility and commitment. They're not separately considered. They're actually considered a one unit, a singular unit, or a singular unit of sense. Yes, so Vicky's sense of responsibility and commitment always inspires her team members. However, if you were to drop the phrase sense off, right? If you were to drop the phrase sense off and just say Vicky's responsibility and commitment, right? Maybe then you could go with inspire. And you could say Vicky's responsibility and commitment always inspire her team members to do their best. But now that you've brought the phrase sense off, this phrase connected with responsibility and commitment actually portrays or actually expresses a singular subject that needs following by a singular verb. So you have Vicky's sense of responsibility and commitment always inspires her team members to do their best. Okay? All right. Let me know if you aren't clear. I'll try again. So for relative clauses, what have we learned here? That relative clauses give us information about the personal thing talked about or mentioned in a sentence, so such as the woman works in a bank. Now, you don't know which woman I'm talking about, but you have to bring in an essential piece of information about the woman so I understand which woman you're talking about. So you say, the woman who lives next door, the woman who lives next door works in a bank. Okay? So the phrase, or so not the phrase actually, the clause who lives next door, this clause is a relative clause, giving you an essential piece of information about the subject that you're talking about in the sentence. These are the flights that have been canceled. These are the flights that have been canceled. All right, we usually use a relative pronoun or adverb to start defining relative clause: who, which, that, when, where, or whose. Okay, we've got some more questions here. Ninzamoon is asking, wish to learn these English grammar chapters from you, sir. The number, the gender, gerund, participle, cordial, requested. Okay. All right. Well, you see, we are actually wrapping up the course, and we will be done with this particular course by tomorrow, inshallah. So tomorrow we will be having our last session before Eid. And until further notice, there will not be any further such sessions after Eid. Okay? However, what I will try to do is I will try to pull off a recap of all the chapters that we've covered until now. Tomorrow, inshallah. Okay? So I hope that will help you. And the actual purpose of conducting these sessions is to not teach you everything that English grammar has to offer, because it's just not possible. You cannot really learn everything in just one course. Okay, these sessions are just here to inspire you to learn English better, to know or to instigate you or to intrigue you to intrigue you to learn more about English grammar and English as a whole, right? So you spend more time with English. So you invest more time in English and eventually become better at it. Okay. So we discussed all these chapters. So you can look these chapters up later during your free time and learn more about them. So today I'm discussing relative clauses. Today I've just discussed subject and predicate. But as you can see, subject and predicate is just not that much. There is more to it. But is it really possible for me to cover the entire chapter within an hour? Of course not. No one can. It's just not humanly possible, because learning is a continuous process, and you need to keep yourselves in it as much as you can to learn better, to know better, to perform better, right? So the sessions are only here to inspire you, to intrigue you to learn English, to get you some ideas about English. That's just it. Okay. So tomorrow, inshallah, we will be wrapping up our course ahead of Eid. And until further notice, there will not be any further sessions after Eid. Okay. But tomorrow, what I will try to do, I hope to do, is I would like to recap all the chapters that we have covered until now. Okay. We have another question here from Misbah, asking, would you please again explain the rules and uses of the number of? Okay, there is not much to know, or there are not many rules of the phrase the number of. So whenever you have something, whenever you want to talk of a subject that is preceded by the phrase number of, then the verb following must be singular, such as the number of people who have showed up for voting is quite high. Or the number of cars on the roads today is quite high. Do you follow? So whenever you go with the number of anything, then that particular subject or that entire subject phrase is considered as singular, no matter how many things you're talking about. Okay. So the number of people, the number of cars must be followed by a singular verb, is or was, never a plural verb. However, on the other hand, if you go with a number of, not the number of, but rather a number of, then of course that entire phrase is to be considered as plural. So a number of people were talking about you today, not was. A number of people were talking about or were looking for you today. A number of men or a number of people were looking for you today, not was. Okay, but when you go with the number of, you particularly mean that number. And numbers, as we know, are always singular. Okay, but a number of does not specifically talk about the number, but rather a number of things. So then you have to focus on the plurality of the subject. So a number of people came looking for you, or a number of people were looking for you, but the number of people that were looking for you was quite high. Okay, I mean, maybe 15 people showed up and they wanted to know where you were. Am I being able to make enough sense? I hope so. If not, do let me know again. Saladin Rana is asking me whether there is a course and assessment. Yes, of course, there will be a course and assessment once we wrap up this entire course tomorrow, inshallah. I will email you the course and assessment, hopefully by tomorrow, and you will all sit for the assessment, and I will have all of your scores recorded, and I'll contact you as I deem fit. Or not me exactly, the office, Automatics, will contact you as required, inshallah. All right? Okay. Moving forward to the next slide. Now we have who, that. We can use who or that to talk about people. That is more common and a bit more informal. She's the woman who cuts my hair. He's the man that I met at the conference. Follow this. So who and that are relative clauses, and how exactly are we using them? We can use who or that to talk about people. That is more common and a bit more informal. She's the woman who cuts my hair. So here you're talking about a woman, and you need to give in, or you need to come up with an important piece of information about this woman, right? So how do you do so? You do so with the help of a relative clause, and you form the relative clause with the help of a relative pronoun, which in this case is who. So she's the woman who cuts my hair. He's the man that I met at the conference. Now, mind it, that we can use who and that both to talk about people. However, who is more formal, that is informal. We don't normally go with that to refer to people, but we do informally. But whenever you're talking or whenever you're writing formally, try not to form a relative clause with the pronoun that. Okay, so we can use who or that to talk about people. That is more common and a bit more informal. She's the woman who cuts my hair. He's the man that I met at the conference. All right. Which and that. We can use which or that to talk about things. Now, to talk about things other than human beings, we can use both which or that. Now, that again is common and informal. Let's take a look at these examples here. There was a 1-year guarantee which came with the TV. There was a 1-year guarantee which came with the TV. The laptop that I bought last week has started making a strange noise. The laptop that I bought last week has started making a strange noise. Okay? So here, in the first example, you're talking about guarantee. Now, you don't know, you haven't mentioned which particular guarantee is this that you're talking about. So what you do is you add a relative clause to explain better or to mention an important piece of information, and you do so with the help of a relative clause, specifically with the help of the relative pronoun which. So there was a 1-year guarantee which came with the TV. The laptop that I bought last week has started making a strange noise. Now, you could just say the laptop has started making a strange noise. Could you not? You could just say that the laptop has started making a strange noise. But then again, an important piece of information would be missing if you did so, right? Because this particular information that you bought this laptop just last week is important. That means that the laptop is new and it's supposed to perform at its best. But then again, it's not. It has started to make it has started making a strange noise, which it is not supposed to do. So to mention that particular timing to talk about the time when exactly you bought it, you need to bring in a relative clause here in this sentence, which in this case is that I bought last week. So in this relative clause, you have the relative pronoun that making the clause a relative clause. So the laptop that I bought last week has started making a strange noise. Okay? Do we have any confusions? If we do, if any of us have any confusions, please post your queries or confusions in the comment section. I will try my best to clarify your confusions. Okay? All right. Moving on to the next slide here, we have other pronouns. What about when? So we use the pronoun when to refer to time, to talk about the time of an action, or to talk about the time of something or anything. Summer is the season when I'm happiest. Summer is the season when something happens, right? So what happens when it's summer? Summer is the season when I'm happiest. Where? We use the pronoun where to refer to places. So where can refer to a place. That's the stadium where Real Madrid play. That's the stadium where Real Madrid play. Whose refers to the person that something belongs to. We use the pronoun whose to refer to people to whom something belongs. Okay, to whom something or some things belong. Okay, so he's a musician whose albums have sold millions. He's a musician whose albums have sold millions or millions of times. He's a musician whose albums have sold millions. So note the relative clauses here. In the first example, summer is the season when I'm happiest. Which part do you think is the relative clause here in this sentence? When I'm happiest. Look at the second example here. That's the stadium where Real Madrid play. That's the stadium where Real Madrid play. So which again is the relative clause here, where Real Madrid play. This part is the relative clause in the sentence. He's a musician whose albums have sold millions. Here again, in this sentence, you have the relative clause, whose albums have sold millions. Whose albums have sold millions. This part is the relative clause here. Are we clear? Hopefully. Omitting the relative pronoun. Now, when not to use a relative pronoun. Now, so far we've learned when do we use relative pronouns. We do use relative pronouns when we have essential pieces of information to mention in a sentence. So we bring in relative pronouns to form relative clauses to lay out essential pieces of information about the subjects about the subjects in sentences, right? But when exactly do we omit a relative pronoun? When exactly do we not go with a relative clause? Sometimes we can leave out the relative pronoun. Excuse me. The thing is, yes, a relative clause is still here, but without the help of a relative pronoun. That's the main idea on this slide. We do mention a relative clause. But in the process, we're leaving out a relative pronoun. Okay? Sometimes we can leave out the relative pronoun. For example, we can usually leave out who, which, or that if it is followed by a subject, such as the assistant that we met was really kind. Now, something is wrong with this sentence. Take a look at the bracketed that here. The assistant that we met was really kind. So here, the sentence seems the sentence seems quite wordy, right? W-O-R-D-Y, wordy. It seems quite wordy, and it also seems choppy. It doesn't really sound right. So the assistant that we met was really kind is not right, but rather we should be saying the assistant we met was really kind. The assistant we met was really kind. Here, you have the subject, we. Therefore, we can omit that before we. You follow? The assistant we met was really kind. So which is the relative clause here? We met was really kind. Now, do we have a relative pronoun here? We don't. We could, but we don't. We're omitting the relative pronoun here because otherwise the clause would not be, or the sentence would not be fine. The sentence would not be smooth enough. It would become choppy. Okay? It would become grammatically incorrect. The assistant that we met was really kind is not correct, but rather drop that and just say the assistant we met was really kind. We can't usually leave it out if it is followed by a verb, however. Instead of a subject, if there is a verb following a relative pronoun in a relative clause, then of course you have to keep it. I mean, you have to keep that particular relative pronoun, and we cannot omit it, such as the assistant that helped us was really kind. You see? Here you don't have a subject. You could have, well, if we had a subject here, then of course we would drop the relative pronoun that, such as the assistant that the assistant that helped us was really kind. Here, you cannot drop that because if you did, then your sentence would be the assistant helped us was really kind, and that would be incorrect, right? So you have to keep that here because that is immediately followed by a verb, which is help. But if it were followed by a subject, such as we, he, she, I, then of course you would have to drop not the subject, but the relative pronoun before it, like in the first example. The assistant we met was really kind. Here, putting that would be completely unnecessary and would make it grammatically incorrect. Am I making sense? Here we have a query here, or note of clarification, or someone asking for clarification. Means I say, we must omit relative clause before relative pronoun. Am I correct? So no, you are not. Because we're not omitting a relative clause before a relative pronoun. We are just omitting a relative pronoun if and only if that relative pronoun is followed by a subject. Like in here, the first example, the assistant that we met was really kind. So here you have the relative pronoun that, and right after it you have we, which is a subject. We is a subject here. Just like I, you, he, she, right? They, these are all subject pronouns. So you have a subject pronoun here. If you have a relative pronoun followed by a subject pronoun, then your relative pronoun must be dropped, must be omitted from that sentence to make or to keep your sentence grammatically smooth, grammatically correct, grammatically fine. The assistant we met was really kind. This is okay, this is correct. But the assistant that we met was really kind is incorrect. On another note, however, if you have a verb following a relative pronoun, then of course we don't drop or we don't omit that relative pronoun. We keep it, like in the second example. The assistant that helped us was really kind. The assistant that helped us was really kind. Now, if we drop that here, the sentence would be grammatically incorrect. How so? Read it without that. The assistant helped us was really kind. Doesn't make sense. Isn't grammatically correct, is it? Of course not. So the assistant that helped us was really kind is the correct choice of sentence, is the correct choice of structure. Okay? All right, Dustin Bushra is saying, could you please help me with the concept related to zero clauses, first clauses, and second clauses? Okay, I'll come back to your question. I'll have to look this particular numbering of clauses myself first, but I promise you I will come back to you, come back to this query of yours. Thank you for asking this. Okay, we have another question from Salahuddin Rana. Is that needed a comma after assistant when we omitted that before main subject? No, you don't have to put a comma anywhere here. The assistant that helped us was really kind. There is a misconception that there must be a comma before that, or there must be a comma after that, or mistakenly or unknowingly we do so. But no, don't do so. Generally, we don't put a comma before or after that. Before or after that, generally. But yes, there are some exceptional cases. But for today, we're only learning, we're only going for the general rules. So generally, never put a comma before or after the relative pronoun that. Okay? All right. Now we have adverbial clauses. What about this? Let's take a look at adverbial clauses. What are adverbial clauses? Adverbial clauses generally follow the main clause, or an adverbial clause generally follows the main clause unless otherwise stated. The following are the main types of adverbial clause. Time sets the timing for the main clause, such as we should go as soon as you are ready. We should go as soon as you are ready. I'll call for you whenever you like. I'll call for you whenever you like. Since she went away, I haven't been able to sleep. Since she went away, I haven't been able to sleep. The moment he said it, I started to feel better. The moment he said it, I started to feel better. Now, adverbial clauses may come before or after main clauses. Introduced by, or such adverbial clauses that talk about time are introduced by, after, as soon as, before, once, since, till, the moment that, until, whenever, when, while. All right? So, do you remember our discussion on dependent and independent clauses? Okay. No worries if you don't. Well, you see, a sentence can be made up of two clauses, one of them being an independent clause, the other being a dependent clause. So we know the dependent clauses always depend on independent clauses, right? And whenever in a sentence we have the independent clause at first, we don't need to put a comma after the independent clause and before the following dependent clause. But if we put a dependent clause at the first of a sentence, then of course that dependent clause must be followed by a comma before the independent clause is written. Okay? Similarly, such adverbial clauses, or the clause that has an adverb with it, making the entire clause an adverbial clause, such clauses are dependent clauses. Adverbial clauses are dependent clauses. Now note, when you have such a dependent clause, if you put the dependent clause at the beginning of a sentence, then it must be followed by a comma. But if the dependent clause is following an independent clause, then of course there mustn't be a comma after the independent clause or before the dependent clause. Okay? Take a look at these examples here. We should go. We should go as soon as you are ready. So here, as soon as you are ready, this part is the dependent clause and at the same time is the adverbial clause. Because why? This clause is made an adverbial clause with the adverbial phrase as soon as, you see? So as soon as you are ready. We should go as soon as you are ready. Also, this clause is talking about time or denoting or connoting time, something to do with time, the timing of going, the time of going, or the timing of going. So we should go as soon as you are ready. I'll call for you whenever you like. Whenever is, of course, another adverb talking about or giving an idea of time. Just when you like, I will call you. So I'll call for you whenever you like. Since she went away, again, follow this. In this sentence, the former part is, of course, a dependent clause and an adverbial clause, which is why right after this we have a comma. You see, since she went away, comma, I haven't been able to sleep. So I haven't been able to sleep is the main clause here and also the independent clause here. The moment he said it, again, another dependent clause and more specifically an adverbial clause because we have the adverbial phrase, the moment. So the moment he said it, comma, I started to feel better. Okay? All right. Dustin Busher is asking, the assistant who helped us was really kind. Can we use who rather than that? Of course. In fact, who is more encouraged? Who is actually more encouraged? Remember, I said that we use who to talk about people. We use that also to talk about people and other things. And that is used for or under informal contexts or under informal circumstances. That is used for informal, in an informal context. That is used in an informal context. But whenever you want to talk about formal, whenever you want to express something formally, it's better to go with who. And I myself also prefer going with who whenever we're talking about people. Okay, so the assistant who helped us was really kind instead of that. Even though if you did use that, it wouldn't be wrong, but going with who is a better option. So the assistant who helped us was really kind. All right, and that's fine. Okay, Sultan Al-Arafat here is asking how to remove confusion regarding the use of who and whom. Please share some hacks. It's disappointing to make such mistakes. Okay, it's really not tough. We did discuss this when we were discussing subject and object pronouns. If you actually go back to my lecture on pronouns, you just may have a better understanding of the differences between who and whom. But to briefly lay it out, I would like you to know that who is a subject pronoun, whereas whom is the object pronoun of who. So just for example, think like this. You're talking about a person here, and you're asking someone, wait. Such as, for example, you say this, he gave me a book. Follow what I'm saying here. He gave me a book. Right? So you say he gave me a book. When you say he gave me a book, what's the subject here? Which is the subject pronoun here? He, correct? He is the subject pronoun here. At the same time, now you're asking someone else, or someone is asking you, who gave you the book? Follow this. Who gave you the book? Because here someone took an action, right? Someone took an action, the action of giving you the book. So who gave you the book? So here you go with who, of course, because who has taken an action and is the subject pronoun. But I gave my book to him. Follow this. I gave my book to him. I gave my book to her, or I gave my book to him. Okay? Again, another person, or a person that you may be talking to, is now asking you, whom did you give the book to? Not who did you give the book to, but rather, whom did you give the book to? Because here, the person who received the book did not take an action, but rather received an action from you. right? So just as you changed to him from he when this person received an action from you rather than giving you an action, right? So likewise or similarly, when this person or the person that is in question has received something from you, you go with the pronoun whom and not who. So you say, whom did you speak to? Or whom did you give the book to? Not who, but who spoke to you or who spoke with you? Who gave that book to you? Who assigned that project to you? Okay? But whom did you assign the project to? Here, this project was assigned to someone. This someone received the project. This someone did not assign the project to someone else, but rather received it. So you go with whom, because he was on the receiving end. But if he were on the giving end, then he would be giving out the project to somebody else, right? In that case, you would say, who gave you this project, right? But if you received it or someone received it and this person is in question, the identity of this person is not known. So you say, whom did you give this project to? Do you follow? Now, do you understand the difference between who and whom? I hope so. Okay. Now, moving on to the next slide. Adverbial clauses that talk about places. So, place, sets where the action of the main clause takes place, such as I put it where nobody would find it. I put it where nobody would find it. He made an impact everywhere that he went. He made an impact everywhere that he went. Wherever you looked, he was to be found. Wherever you looked, he was to be found. Introduced by where, wherever, or everywhere. Most welcome. Sultan, I'm glad to know that you have understood it, I hope. Okay. All right, so whenever you want to talk about a place, and to talk about the place, you need to bring in an adverbial clause. We most of the time we go with adverbs such as where, everywhere, wherever. Okay, so I put it where nobody would find it. He made an impact everywhere that he went. Wherever you looked, he was to be found. Also note, in each case, or in the first example, you have the dependent clause, which is the adverbial clause, coming after the independent clause, or the main clause, which is why there isn't a comma after the main clause here. But in the third example, you have the dependent clause, also the adverbial clause at first, which is why it is followed by a comma before you have your independent clause or the main clause of the sentence. He was to be found. Wherever you looked, he was to be found. He made an impact. He made an impact where? Everywhere that he went. He made an impact everywhere that he went. I put it. Where did you put it? I put it where nobody would find it. Where nobody would find it. Okay? All right. I hope this is clear. Manner. Adverbial clauses that define manner. Okay? Sets out how the main clause was carried out. Now, these adverbial clauses set out, we'll talk about how the action in the main clause was carried out. Such adverbial clauses that talk about manner are introduced by as if, as though, how, just as, or the way that. Now, let's read the examples here. Mandy looked as if she had seen a ghost. Mandy looked as if she had seen a ghost. Cameron wandered. Cameron wandered in the way that he does. Cameron wandered in the way that he does. You have to fasten it as though it was a shoelace. You have to fasten it as though it was a shoelace. The room was decorated just as he had imagined. The room was decorated just as he had imagined. In all these sentences, you can see that the adverbial clauses are describing the manner in how the action in the main clauses took place or went about. Okay? Like Mandy looked as if he had seen a ghost. Mandy looked what or how? How did Mandy look? He looked as if she had seen a ghost. Cameron wandered in. Actually, Cameron was wandering in something, right? Do you know the meaning of wander? Wander is to actually wander about, not to exactly think of something, but rather to roam around a place without really having a clue or try to find out the clue of that place. So Cameron wandered in the way that he does. You have to fasten it as though it was a shoelace. You have to fasten it as though it was a shoelace. The room was decorated. How was the room decorated? It was decorated just as he had imagined. Okay, so this person whose room this was maybe was decorated in a way just as the person had imagined this room to be. Okay, are we together on this? Let me know if we are not. And then reason. Now we have adverbial clauses that talk about reasons or that define reasons of actions mentioned in the main clauses. Okay, sets out the thinking behind the action of the main clause. I don't want to go. Where do you want to go? Why do you not want to go? I don't want to go because I'm not keen on old movies. So this friend of yours doesn't want to go to watch a film at a cinema hall, and you ask him, why don't you want to go? And he answers, I don't want to go because I'm not keen on old movies, meaning I'm not interested in old movies. I don't want to go because I'm not keen on old movies. So because I'm not keen on old movies is again an adverbial clause, a dependent clause. Since no one was ready, I sat down and turned on the TV. Since no one was ready, I sat down and turned on the TV. Okay, so since no one was ready, I sat down and just a moment. Yeah, since no one was ready, I sat down and turned on the TV. Okay, here again. Why did you sit down and turn on the TV? You did so because there was no one, or no one was yet ready. And this part is actually, this adverbial clause is actually mentioned at the beginning, followed by the main clause. So since no one was ready, I sat down and turned on the TV. Now, adverbial clauses that define reasons may come before or after the main clause, and they're usually introduced by as, because, or since. As, because, or since. We've got this question from Sultan Al Arafat asking, you have to fasten it as though it was a shoelace. Why was this used here and not were? Okay, let me see. Oh, why would it be were? Why do you think that you're talking about a were? Wait, you have to fasten as though it was a shoelace. We don't really know what they're talking about. Maybe, wait, you have to fasten it as though it was a shoelace. I mean, like, why are you suggesting that it could be, or it should have been were and not was? Let me know that first, and then I'll try answering this query. Okay. Now we have purpose. Adverbial clauses discussing purposes or defining purposes behind actions mentioned in main clauses. So purpose sets out what it was hoped would be achieved by carrying out the action of the main clause. Put it just there so that it holds the door open. Put it just there so that it holds the door open. Leave a bit for Becky in case she's hungry when she gets in. Leave a bit for Becky in case she's hungry when she gets in. Introduced by so that, in order that, in case, or lest. Purpose can also be indicated by so as to, in order to, followed by the base form of a verb, such as I'm living with my mom and dad so as to save money. I'm living with my mom and dad so as to save money. He put the chair against the door in order to hold it open. He put the chair against the door in order to hold it open. So we have these adverbial clauses that talk about purposes, that mention purposes behind actions mentioned in main clauses. And to do so, to talk about such purposes in adverbial clauses, we can do so. Such adverbial clauses are introduced by so that, in order that, in case, or lest. So just take a look at the first example here. Put it just there, so that it holds the door open. Why should we put it just there, right? The adverbial clause tells you the purpose behind this action here, mentioned in the main clause. Put it just there, but why? So that it holds the door open, so that it keeps the door open, right? Leave a bit for Becky. So maybe the people involved were devouring a cake, right? And then someone says, leave a bit for Becky in case she's hungry when she gets in case what? Why? What's the reason for leaving a bit for Becky? In case, just in case she's hungry, just in case Becky is hungry when she comes or when she gets in, right? Okay. Purpose can also be indicated by so as to. We also use such adverbial phrases such as adverbial phrases such as so as to, in order to, followed by the base form of the verb. And how do we do so exactly? I'm living with my mom and dad. This is your main clause. But then again, you want to mention the purpose behind this, right? Why exactly are you taking this action here? Why are you living with your mom and dad? I'm living with my mom and dad so as to save money. Otherwise, in other words, you could say because I want to save money. Instead of saying because I want to save money, you can go with so as to. So I'm living with my mom and dad so as to save money. You put the chair against the door in order to hold it open. You put the chair against the door in order to hold it open. And why did you put the chair against the door? What's the purpose behind it? The purpose is to hold it open. And how do you exactly say so? You're bringing the adverbial phrase in order to, making the entire clause an adverbial clause. You put the chair against the door in order to hold it open. Okay, in order to hold it open. All right, so are we clear so far? And now we have contrast. Adverbial clauses that define contrasts between the main clause, that actually highlights a contrast in the main clause. Suggests that something else may need to be taken into account regarding the main clause. Now, follow these. However much you may want to spend your money, however much you may want to spend your money, try to save a little each month. However much you may want to spend your money, try to save a little each month. Although it had rained, the ground was still very dry. We must try to do something for the environment, even if we can't solve all the world's problems. You see? So here, in each of these sentences, you can see that there is a point of contrast. So you need to save a little each month, even if you're not earning much. That's the main idea in the first example. However much you may want to spend your money, right? Like no matter how much you want to spend your money, even then, even so, you must save a little each month. So there is a point of contrast here. And exactly how are you saying this entire sentence? How exactly are you structuring the sentence? You're doing so with the help of an adverbial clause. And what's your adverbial phrase here? However. So however much, or however much, not however, sorry, however much. However much you may want to spend your money, try to save a little each month. Although it had rained, the ground was still very dry. The ground was dry, although it had rained. Okay? We must try to do something for the environment. We have to do something for the environment. That's the idea. But where is the contrast here? What's the problem? The problem is that even if we do so, we won't be able to solve all the world's problems. But then again, something at least would get done, right? So we must try to do something for the environment, even if we can't solve all the world's problems. Such adverbial clauses may come before or after their main clauses, and such adverbial clauses are introduced by although, even though, even if, however much, as, or while. Okay? Are we clear? All right, so this is it for today. I hope we've learned a tad bit of this and that. And if you, however, have any queries or confusions, do let me know your confusions in the comment section. Now is the time. Tomorrow, I'll see all of you again, inshallah, hopefully. And tomorrow, we will go through a thorough recap of all the chapters that we've covered until now. So, and after the session tomorrow, inshallah, I will email you the course and assessment, which you will take, inshallah, and I will record your scores, and then we'll see what we can do, inshallah, for all of you. All right? So thank you so much for being here with me today, We have this remark from Ms. Baldin Ahmeda saying, thanks for giving all the answers of my queries. If I had an English teacher like in my school life, I would have not faced that much trouble in English. Well, Alhamdulillah, I'm so glad that you think of me like that. I'm glad to have you here, and I'm happy to have been able to answer all your queries. Right? I hope to help you more, inshallah, in the coming future, and hope to see you tomorrow again, inshallah. All right? Tasnim Bushra says, thank you, sir. Most welcome, Tasnim. Well, you're most welcome. And then we have Sultan Arafat saying, we will miss your class during break. Yes, in fact, I will miss all of you during this Eid break, and I will also miss taking or conducting these live sessions as well. So yes, thanks to all of you once again, and let's meet again, inshallah, tomorrow. Until then, everyone, please stay safe and take good care of yourselves. Allah Hafiz.